Okay. Hi, everyone. We should be live with BrisJS for December 2020. We've made it. It's the last month of the year. Give yourselves a big pat on the back. You've managed to get through it. Hopefully, you have managed to beat the heat as well with our little heat wave here. On that note, you can get straight into some JavaScript talks, or in this case, we'll tell you all about our talks for BrisJS tonight. I'm just waiting a little bit to let everyone join the stream. Hi, Simon. Nice background. Yep, we've got to go with the Seinfeld wallpapers. A few folks on the stream. Thank you for joining us. Okay, I'm going to put the screen share on since I managed to forget that last time, and give everyone half a minute. While we're waiting, I'm just going to tell everyone again about Slido. Slido is how you can be a little bit more interactive here. We've obviously got the chat here on the live chat on YouTube, and we have also got Slido. It is a method of being able to post questions during somebody's talk. So what we do in this format is we actually go and wait till the talk is done, grab all those lovely questions, and then rattle them off to our speaker so that we have a bit of a Q&A back and forth, and do that podcast style approach that we have on the live stream of getting those answers. So yeah, if you want to hop on there, that'd be fantastic. It's a great way to get involved, and Dallas always promises a very Q&A appropriate talk. We've managed to have some great chats when we did our in-person events as well, so that's awesome. I think everyone would have gotten that one. So Slido.com, and you can punch in a code of 1110. Should be pretty easy to remember. I'll post the link in the YouTube live chat as well. Okay, let's crack on with it. As is tradition, in our live and now and our in-person events, we'd like to do the acknowledgement of country. So we are distributed, but please acknowledge all the traditional owners of your location. Pay respects to its elders, past and present. So we're broadcasting from Yatala, that's bordering on the Yugara and Bundjalung people's territory. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of this site on which we broadcast from today, the Yugara and Bundjalung people, and would also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. The meetup is a great place to be able to at least register and get that feedback loop started. Being able to get that email out just before we go out with the event will give you a bit of a synopsis of who's speaking, what's happening. If there's any delays, we use this as a bit of a first line of defense. That way you can understand exactly what's going on for the upcoming talk and any upcoming details. Code of conduct. Hopefully everyone's aware that we have a BrisJS code of conduct. That includes the fact that we're online. It's virtual spaces have people in them too. So we want to make sure this is a harassment-free experience for everyone. So please check that out. Super important to me and to you, because BrisJS is only possible by wonderful people donating their time for a talk. So please submit a talk to us. It would be fantastic to be able to see you and sort of hear your voice and broadcast it to the world at BrisJS, hopefully in person in 2021 in our first meetup, which is in February. So The other thing you can do is request a talk. If you don't have any knowledge on a particular subject, but you're positive that someone out there in the Brisbane ecosystem does, it's an awesome opportunity to just be able to say, hey, maybe you can round up some speakers. I can tweet that out, amplify that message, and see who goes, well, actually, I know about that. Maybe I could do a talk about that. And that'll hopefully help encourage some folks that hadn't thought of doing a talk before as well. So it's a two-way street. You can do that through our GitHub issues. Or if you can go to the present link on brisjs.org. I often tweet out this link as well. It gives you a bit of a pro forma block to be able to fill in some sections. We really just need to know if it's a lightning talk, 10 minutes, if it's a 20-minute to 25-minute sort of normal talk. If it's a double, we give you a 40-minute slot. And then, we're able to try and coordinate a certain amount of talks to be able to fit in an evening. So that's usually how we run it. It's all labeled and worked out through BrisJS. This is last year's. There we go. We've got it all the way around to December 2019. So you can see there that we tag it with the timing and whether or not it's a candidate for the next event. Then it will swap to being confirmed once we've got confirmation by everyone and lock them in, whether it's a volunteered talk or a request. It's all in there. So you can find that at our issues page on GitHub directly if you're keen. There's also plenty of socials. I try and send out a tweet, send out a Facebook, and you can check us out on YouTube. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. It helps get those numbers up, and also lets you know when we do one of these live streams. And also upload any of the events that we've recorded from our in-person events as well. BrisJS.org is our little meeting place site where we've gone and pulled together a couple of links to these different things. So the present link, which I mentioned before, past talks, jobs, and ability to find us when we're having an in-person event. Now, this is an important one. We have a BrisJS job board. That's driven out of the GitHub issues that we have. So as we mentioned, the same sort of protocol. If you've got a job to post and you want to let everyone who's a BrisJS fan know, you can get it on this page with little fuss. All we have to do is tag it once it's in there. So yeah, you want to get your company's jobs up there, feel free to do that directly. Let's actually take a second and have a quick look at it. I should have prepared more, but here it is. So this way we'll be able to give a bit of a shout out for our end of year jobs if you're seeking for your next step. We've got SwiftX, who's looking for, well, they're a crypto trade. They do crypto trading software. So there you go. You read all about that. I'm not going to go through it and explain all of that. We've got Compono. They're also seeking some devs. JavaScript role there, intermediate, senior developer, JavaScript, TypeScript. All about them. Next in the list, we've got some folks from Airteam, and that's a remote position. That's really cool. Very important this day and age. Picklebet, and the one that we've heard about from me. So we're seeking mid and senior developers to set up a brand new team. So you'll be working directly with me. So if that doesn't put you off, please apply. Okay, let's get back to the slides so we can get back to our presenters. So check out all those folks there. Feel free to get in touch with them, and you can find details on the posting. Okay, now, as always, this is not possible without sponsorship. While we have lower overheads with this live stream kind of approach that we've had to do thanks to good old COVID-19, we we still have Console Connect to thank. That's where I work. Well, sorry, PCCW Global. I make this mistake every time. It's because it's on the top of the slide. Console Connect is a wonderful product brand that we have here, launched in Australia as well and all over the world to do direct connect automation of network connectivity. So if you want to be able to get to your clouds, get around the world, you can traverse PCCW Global's network fabric to hop into another data center all across the world with just a few clicks. You can order these things, ports and connections all over the world, fully automated thanks to this wonderful software platform. PCCW Global has a whole bunch of different divisions and areas, and we're all over the globe. And I'm working at delivery and support. And so we have a job going at the moment. We're trying to build a team. We've a couple of positions there to try and build a team that's directly focused on innovation and automation for service provisioning, specialist white glove service, and support systems and things like that as well, to make sure that customers get fantastic experiences. So we want to build all sorts of new things. So it'd be really cool to see everyone from Brisbane apply. We've had a few applications, which is fantastic. We'll be following up with all of those folks. I love the Brisbane representation there, so that's great. If you want to check out any of our other jobs, that TinyCC link should take you to LinkedIn there as well. And thanks very much to PCCW Global for sponsoring our Zoom Pro. That's what they're giving us. That helps to bring this to you, collaborate with our speakers, and then automatically upload it straight into YouTube streaming. So it's made things a lot easier for us and made it all possible. So thanks for sponsoring us as we've moved online. Wallaby has been great actually to sponsor us for a bit of a door prize. They're based in the Gold Coast, and they have been sponsoring these different licenses to give away for Wallaby.js and Quokka.js. Great developer tools there to provide sort of interpreted and real-time test results in your editor directly. It's a super useful tool. So yeah, it'd be awesome to check them out. They want to chat to you in the Discord. Unfortunately, we didn't have a winner last month. That means that we've got more licenses to give away. So get in there and get one. So what I tend to do is put up a question about something in the current speaker's talk. So I listen to the speaker's talk. I find a good thing to ask a question about. Make sure you've been paying attention, basically. And if you can answer that hopefully simple question, then you're in the draw. Just leave us your name and email in the answer. That's all done through Slido, so it pays to get onto that Slido. And so yeah, submit your answers tonight. Okay, without further waffling and ado, we're going to have a presentation from Dallas Clark, who you may have seen a couple of times at BrisJS, friend of the show. DevOps, how we're rolling out DevOps is dead wrong. So he's going to be telling us all about this and making sure that we can get it right for our own sake. So thank you very much, Dallas. And I'm going to end the slideshow. And I'm going to end the screen share. That's what I was trying to do. And I'm going to kick it over to you, Dallas. Thanks very much.
Pleasure. All right, so 1 second. I've got to now switch over to make this nice and easy. And you should see a big hello screen. You're going to be the only one who can respond to me, so I hope so.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. So before, all right. Thank you all for joining tonight. Yeah, so I have presented BrisJS a couple of times. I was just saying to Kevin before, I was the last physical presentation that was done at Auto in General back in March 2020. So just before we all had COVID hit. So hopefully I haven't jinxed it or anything, and hopefully nothing bad happens after tonight's presentation. But I'm thankful. Thank you, Kevin, for giving me the opportunity to join in on the very last month of the year. Before I move on, again, want to say thank you to PCCW Global and Wallaby for sponsoring the event. It's amazing that in the Brisbane community, we have such large organizations that are part of the Brisbane technology community. You know, we're covering so many different organizations here in Brisbane that we're making global impact with a lot of companies. And I had to look up PCCW's customers and partners again, and just amazed that in Australia we're making an influence, you know, through your company, Kevin, with Cisco, Airbnb, Google, eBay, Uber, CNN. And then, you know, I can tell you, you know, the impact my company is making very soon. But we've also got Amazon, big footprint with Amazon locally, and many, many, many more other companies. So it is a powerful city to be in terms of our industry. And at the same time, it's also very small. I'm often, you know, running into people I know through the community or through other organizations all the time. And then last of all, Kevin, well done for BrisJS this year. I've seen Sydney JavaScript shut down and stop presenting. I've seen many, many other communities shut down. So big well done and applause to you for keeping this going, and for not just for the JavaScript community, but you know, all the other related communities that are involved. So I know not everyone is going to be a JavaScript developer tonight that's attending this, and also those who watch this on YouTube later. So again, big applause to you, mate. You've done really well to keep this going this year.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Okay. So just a little bit about myself. So I'm the Associate Manager of Software Engineering at Tiny. There's some credentials there, including a fitness credential that I have from a side gig and everything else. More importantly, if you want to reach out to me, you'll find me on social media using Dallas Clark as the hash, as my tag. And also when LinkedIn is working, because it's not working for a lot of people today, you can find me at Dallas J, the letter J, Clark. I'm sure if you just search up Dallas Clark, you will find me and essentially connect. So if you didn't have an opportunity to ask a question, or you just simply want to connect, please reach out on social media, or link, one of them being LinkedIn. I get the privilege of mentioning where I work. And as I was saying, with the footprint of PCCW, we also have a huge footprint here at Tiny. So there's a small snippet of the number of companies that we work with across the world. Our most popular product is Tiny MCE, and well, that was loud lightning. If you've bold, italic, or underlined something on the internet, there's a good chance you'll used our product. In fact, we're on over 30% of the world's websites. So going by January's 2020 statistics, that's more than 500 million websites that we're currently on. So we're making a huge impact to the internet in terms of our reach. And it amazes me what our customers are doing and what our customers' customers are doing as well using our product. At the end of this talk, I will also mention some careers that we have available at Tiny. Should you want to join us and work with us and make, increase our team and make, big impact in our little tiny organization. Now, normally I get to give out cool merchandise at these speaking events, but if you head to tiny.cloud, you can sign up for a free trial. That's all I can really provide at the last minute for this. I can't give out licenses, I apologize. We just did big Black Friday and Cyber Monday deal. Yeah, so if you're interested, go to tiny.cloud. There is a free trial you can sign up for. Now, for tonight's talk, I'll be talking about DevOps and the common mistakes I see with DevOps when it's rolled out. How this talk was born. I was sitting with a group of developers at a conference last year. It was DDD Brisbane. And they belong to all sorts of companies. Some are with Microsoft, some with Amazon, some were just with various agencies throughout Brisbane, Gold Coast, and Sunshine Coast. And some belong to different industries, from automotive, auto, security, financial, news, and fashion. And there were a lot of talks about frustrations with DevOps and how it was rolled out at their organizations. And we spoke about how we can influence the industry. So I'm hoping, through this talk, I can elaborate some of my learnings along the way. And I will admit, always continually learning. You never stop learning in this role in technology, as you all know. But even with DevOps, always learning. If you think you know everything, you will learn something new the next day. Also, for the purpose of this talk, the target audience, this is targeted towards those who are developers or manage developers directly. So please reach out if you want to discuss how to engage leadership on how to roll out DevOps. So if you're having the initial frustration of rolling out DevOps, trying to get the company on board, this talk won't go into that perspective, but if you have those queries, please let me know. I'm happy to answer anything on LinkedIn or other social media tools. So let's get started. Now, as I was indicating in the previous slide, always learning. So please take some of these insights in this presentation with a grain of salt. These are common pitfalls that organizations I've observed and learned through peers, but are they your pitfalls? Is this related to your organization? This is something for you to review. So please take some of these insights in this presentation with a grain of salt. Now, very quickly, if you don't know what DevOps is, this is your historical team structure. You've got development teams on one side of the wall, and you got your operations team on the other side. DevOps is, it's a set of practices that works to automate and integrate the processes between software development and IT teams so that they can build, test, and release software faster and more reliably, thanks to Atlassian. I do want to note, this is between software development and IT teams. It does not mention the software to use. It does not mention the types of technology. It does not mention which types of stacks, and it doesn't mention on-premise servers or cloud computing. So this is where I start to see some problems arise, because as I'll touch base coming up. So DevOps is the amalgamation of the operations and development teams together. As I'll explain later, this does not mean operations needs to learn how to write a full application, and developers don't need to learn everything about operations. This is a culture change to enable separate teams to understand the needs of each other. More importantly, this is everyone's responsibility, not just a single person or a team. Now, just quickly, I'm not the best designer in the world, but to demonstrate this properly, instead of using that little animation I did, a handshake would have been the best illustration here between those two teams. But at its essence, DevOps is a culture, a movement, a philosophy. And this is where the problem starts. These three things are often overlooked, ignored, or simply unknown. And just to point out something really obvious, DevOps is not about giving developers access to production, which is normally the one common thing that remark that someone has about DevOps. So the benefits of DevOps. It's about speed, move at high velocity, rapid delivery, increase the frequency and pace of releases, reliability, ensure the quality of the application updates and infrastructure changes, scale, operate and manage your infrastructure and development processes at scale, improve collaboration, build more effective teams under a DevOps culture model, and security. Move quickly while retaining control and preserving compliance. Where do we begin to go wrong? And these are some of the insights that I've observed and that I've spoken with peers and collected together. So the first one is overwhelming developers. And this is actually a sore point for many developers. If there's not enough for you to do already. Here's some more work. And this is where often this is one of the biggest problems to trying to get developers on board. And I think the best thing that I can use to explain this, I actually just found this only just recently through Facebook with someone who shared it. But often we see job ads saying you need to know all these different types of technologies. You need to know this and you need to know that. You need to be experienced for 5 years in a technology that's only been out for 2 years. You need to know this. And it's essentially, it becomes too much. And if you are across all these technologies, great. You generally will be a jack of all trades, and that's completely fine. In enterprise, it can be a bit different for these different roles. It certainly wouldn't be asking someone to be a PHP developer and a Python developer and have those two different language responsibilities, whilst also managing full infrastructure and then being across the full Git and continuous integration with TDD and Docker and Kubernetes. You get the point. This is an entire IT department for enterprise. And then whilst we're at it, let's throw DevOps in. And let's just make this job a whole lot harder of being a developer within the industry. The one thing I need to point out, and this is more so to the managers and more upper management, remember your teams are human. At the end of the day, they are human. There is such thing as burning out. This does happen. It will happen if you push your developers too far and make the job unbearable, essentially. There is such thing as work-life balance. That culture is very important. And also humans cannot scale on their own. If you want more work, you need to pay for more work. If you want more work out of a team, the common answer to that is you need to add more resources and manage your teams and come up with a structure that's suitable. And then also there's the argument to that as well. You just can't keep throwing people at a problem as well. So sometimes a restructure is required there as well. But just remember, they are human. So please, consider this as being one big sore point for developers. I'm speaking on behalf of developers, being a developer myself. If you want people to be experts in this area, don't get your full stack developer and tell them they need to do more work. Take steps. So how to roll this out? First of all, talk to the teams about where gaps are and what is the highest priorities. What's on fire? Introduce the proposed changes, discuss how to deliver the idea and engage appropriate stakeholders. Roll out the culture changes. This isn't just about technology. There is culture changes here, and I will point that out more and more often throughout this presentation. Because this is where I believe people start to view DevOps completely wrong. When they hear DevOps, they start thinking about, oh yeah, we'll throw in Jenkins, we'll throw in, we've got to do this with GitHub Actions, or we're going to do this with automated tests, and it's all about technology. But you need to stop and reevaluate about what the organization needs, and it starts with culture. It's about bringing these teams together. Oh, sorry, I actually just went back. I'll just keep moving forward. What is the best influence of rolling out an effective DevOps movement? The first answer to this is talking. Get together, have these discussions. Don't just force upon these changes to your teams and expect them to work it out. You need to have these steps to essentially have these discussions with your teams. Ask them what's on fire. Talk to them about how we can roll this out, and find that the little problems that could be with one of your team members that could actually be a larger problem across the team. So first of all, start talking. Talk about it, and it could be water cooler talk to begin with. So if DevOps isn't strong within your organization, just start the talk about it. Talk about it as often as you like. Research about it, read up about it, take every single step you can expect. The next problem that I see with DevOps is high expectations. the one thing you need to really do with DevOps and with any culture change is grow together. Don't aggressively push this agenda upon developers or the operations team. And with the right training and approach, your teams will grow organically. If it's being forced upon the teams, and as I take back to the very first point, their job is already overwhelming. They've got technical needs to meet, they've got product needs to meet, they've got marketing needs to meet, they've got financial needs to meet, and then now they've been shown this DevOps movement. So please make sure you talk about it clearly, talk about it with your teams, and make sure there's a two-way conversation going together. Don't expect everyone to champion DevOps equally. Be clear when the organization wants to achieve results. The early adopters in your teams will be the mentors for the rest of your team, and get involved with your teams. So as a manager, if you're not on the tools, that's okay, but be involved with your teams. Get hands-on, talk to them about it. It will take time to roll out, which is another thing to point out. There is so many different learning styles that people have, and you need to take different approaches on educating your teams and organizations. Repeating the same method. So for example, if you were to do a session workshop every single time with trying to do your whole organization, it's not really an effective solution to roll out a culture change. And also it's quite boring to be truthful about it. If you want to have an organization or teams to adopt DevOps, go through multiple learning styles. So this could be, tell people to jump in. Some people dive in deep, and that's the best way that they learn. Others would like to learn by going through the tools. Others like to learn visually, and others like to hear about it or be demonstrated or pair programming. There are so many different ways that you need to be able to educate your team and organization. So as I point out, also as a moment to grow together, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So it's just some wisdom there that definitely applies to DevOps. You're all in this together. You all have the same goal. You need to grow together, and definitely don't push it upon your developers aggressively. And those who are early adopters in your teams, support them. They will be the greatest mentors for the rest of your team. And make sure that that same culture fit from yourselves as either leads of teams or management, or even if you're a developer and you just want this movement to go really well, please ensure that others that adopt DevOps have that right culture as well. It's really, really important. So phased rollout. Most organizations will jump in and rush to the process. Please research, research, and research. If I haven't said it enough, please research. Automate a single process. It can do anything from something very trivial to something advanced if time permits. Just big asterisks on that if time permits. Please don't start something that will take a significant amount of time as your first DevOps change. As I said, automate a single process. This could even just be creating a build of your web application, and that's it. It only creates a build, doesn't deploy it, doesn't do anything, but you've done first step. And if the build breaks, attend to it. Make automation part of the culture as well. If builds break and others, other things that you add to this DevOps movement, if anything breaks in the system, make sure there is an automation process. Make sure that teams respond and that everyone's communicated to. And that's, as I've mentioned, that's not just technology. So there could be processes could break. Try and automate as much as possible. Like if you can get to the point where you create a release and one of the product owners signs off on it, or a manager has to sign off on it, from manager of marketing or product has to sign off on it. Create that automation pipeline. They click a button to sign it off, and essentially build that pipeline to automate that and push it into production. so many different ways this could be rolled out as well. Please, as I said, take this with a grain of salt of what I do say, but take the idea away from this presentation. What you end up doing for your product, your team, your organization will not ever be the same, which I'll bring up later on. DevOps rollout is also very similar to Agile transformation. You can't just say to your development teams, let's do Agile and change, and then away you go. Agile, for a lot of organizations, can take up to 5 years to properly roll out. Sometimes you got to start with one single team and make sure you nail it with that single team before you broaden it with other teams. So if you are in an IT organization or you're in a department that has a lot of members, do make sure you don't rush into this process. Make sure you take the time, start off with simple steps, and you'll be amazed how quickly, how aggressive that will become. But it's important that you keep it organic. Take it in steps. Don't disrupt the system in one rollout and expect everything to shine, because I can tell you right now that is going to be your biggest pitfall if you just push upon the developers. And I generally find, like, some people don't understand DevOps entirely. They'll just say, as like they did with Agile, oh, we're Agile, we do stand-ups. And then others will say, oh, we do DevOps, we automate our builds. And it's like, no, that's not DevOps, and that's not Agile either. So again, please research, and don't apply things that you see much larger companies directly to your teams either. Again, going back to the earlier pitfall, start by talking and learning about what is actually on fire with your teams. Where is a lot of time being used by your teams? Like, is the build process the delay? Is the testing process the delay? You need to have those conversations. Which brings on to insufficient checkpoints. Automate everything, do all the things. But also, I generally find the low-level technical checks like unit testing is no longer efficient to determine if software can be shipped. And this is, I get a lot of people who would argue with me a lot about this. But if you've got, if you're at the very start of building your testing pipelines and things like that, so you're looking at testing within your DevOps culture change, you're going to get so much more out of, so much more benefits out of doing end-to-end testing and integrated testing if they don't exist. You'll get a quick bang for buck in terms of the amount of time you put into those over unit tests. Unit tests are great for catching coding mistakes, but they normally have little impact to the end users, which is very, at the end of the day, you need to start thinking about the end user, the customer experience. So understand your audience, focus on the customer experience. What matters at the end of the day? Now, this is going to be different for many different people that are listening to this. If you're in a financial company and $1 plus $1 must equal $2, please do not take this comment, as I'm just saying right now, as one of those things that you can ignore. Unit tests are definitely important for the financial industry. So dollar does matter. If it's 1 cent plus 5 cents, you don't want that to equal 18 cents. There is reasons for unit tests, and generally DevOps can assist those companies, but it will be a slower release cycle just simply because of the amount of testing and sign-offs and checkpoints required before it goes into production does matter a lot. Having said that, banks like Commonwealth Bank are making huge leaps and bounds in terms of the number of times that they release. And you can have different release cycles for all your different products within your organization. So don't just focus on one single organization having rules applied to everything. I can tell you at Tiny, we have different rules for Tiny MCE release cycles. We have different rules for our marketing site. We have different rules for blog. Every team, every product is actually different. So we may have one team that looks after multiple products, and there's different rules that are applied for those different products. And that's because we make risk-based tests and assessments. We don't have the stringent release checks on our blogs, for example. There is no need for that. So there's completely different workflows that we go through. Last of all, also more importantly, prioritize as a team, including the non-technical members. So product owners, testers, analysts, management get involved. Be involved with, and discuss on which methods are important to your customers. So don't just have technical people in the room. It's very important that you also include non-technical members and work out what matters in terms of automating everything. I also want to point out, this does include, but is not limited to integration testing, end-to-end testing, load and performance testing, and visual regression testing. These are just some of the ideas that you can do, but they're not always going to be suitable for every single product and application and team and organization. There is different costs associated with this, and that's not just technology, there's also human. And whether or not your team is equipped to do these different types of testing or automation is another question. So again, please review your team and consider the impacts that this is going to have. All right, DevOps. As I was pointing out earlier in this presentation, DevOps is not one person's responsibility. It's not a team's responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility, and including, as I was mentioning before, the non-technical members as well. So with the testers, the analysts, and the product owner, and the Scrum Master, management, the designers even can have an impact into what should be rolled out first. And so have these discussions, involve members on these discussions, and prioritize properly. Think about the customer. At the end of the day, if you think about the customer first, all the other things start to trickle in and make sense. But if you're trying to solve an itch that one single developer may have, I can tell you right now that solving that itch isn't going to solve everything. Think about the customer first. That will get the organization. The organization's always happy if you're selling more. And then with everything after that, once you start to consider the customer, the parts that are on fire within your build pipelines or your rollouts or anything in between will, as I said, prioritize those based on how much of an impact they have on releases. And faster releases means happier customers. So again, coming back to that customer experience when they start to see fast release cycles. So it is not to isolate resources. That's bad English. So this is the biggest mistake I see with a lot of companies when they roll out DevOps, is making a single team or person handle all of the DevOps responsibilities. This is costly, inefficient, it's time consuming. It just doesn't quite work. What DevOps is a culture change, and it's not just a single person responsibility. It's not just a single team's responsibility. This is about developers and operations working together. So get everyone involved. Use existing resources from within your organization and harness their expertise. Collaboration here is the key. Involve members from both teams in high-level planning sessions. So before you start a sprint or before you start to think about how we're going to bring in this technology or this feature or this product, collaborate. Again, coming back to talking and getting the different teams to collaborate together. as I was mentioning with Agile, implementing DevOps can also be a big adjustment for enterprises in particular. In some organizations, departments that are used to working in isolation are now required to collaborate together. So this isn't just like, hey, you two teams start talking together. You need to have an icebreaker session to begin with, and actually just have a meeting where you get to meet the different teams. Don't just throw two teams together and say, hey, you need to solve DevOps. That won't work. And some cases I've seen with some organizations I've worked with in the past, some of these teams can be located anywhere. And as as the world has changed very much this year in 2020, for those who listen much later, wondering what year we're talking about, some of these, some people are going to be located anywhere in the world. So have these gel sessions to begin with and get people talking, and solve those social problems first, and then start the technical culture changes involved with DevOps. Make the rollout phase gradual and comfortable as well. Optimize the processes, make them quicker and more efficient. So it's not just technical changes here. There is other processes that are involved, as I was mentioning, with sign-offs from product, head of product or head of marketing, whatever your application team or organization may have. At Tiny, the way we leverage DevOps is we do have someone who is dedicated towards this movement, and we will often refer to him as being our DevOps developer. But the way that we're implementing this change within Tiny is that he will often be the person that is managing the DevOps movement. When it comes to making changes with our servers and infrastructure, he is simply managing those changes and essentially checking in with the different teams and ensuring that that work is completed. In many ways, he's essentially managing the DevOps changes across our engineering teams with our cloud and DX teams in particular. And down to even our Tiny MCE editor teams and our research and development teams, he's involved across the board. But we do have him dedicated, and as I said, we are referring to him as our DevOps engineer. But his position is primarily to roll it out and involve the other members and essentially manage the rollout, essentially, at the end of the day. So that's how we've implemented it at Tiny and how we're rolling it out. There could be a day when we become so automated and autonomous within our engineering teams that we'll revisit that DevOps position and pivot it into a different direction. So how you manage this is, again, please consider your teams and your structure, your organization. We've got a minimum 2 years worth of work that we want to do around DevOps at Tiny. And so having someone manage that process and the changes is really important to us to roll it out properly. Which comes to the next point, recognize the need to pivot. No one is the same. So not one person in your organization, team, product, or application is equal to another. That's with individuals, but also with your companies. Please, 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 don't make your teams operate like Facebook, Google, Spotify, Microsoft, Uber, the latest thing that you've just read online. Don't force your teams to work and operate like those teams. You're not Google. Don't try to be like Google. There's reasons that they've come up with those strategies and methods for their teams because that's what works for their teams. Organization and technologies change. Now, I want to point out, organizations change as well. It's not just technology. So hence the underlining of our organizations. As you're rolling out DevOps, you will continually need to pivot, adjust, and rewrite priorities. That is a given. That is something you will need to learn and adapt, which is why you need to introduce flexibility early. If you introduce this early, it makes it easier as you continue the DevOps movement. Measure, monitor everything. Include build times, deployment times, team engagement, and even developer happiness. Measure everything. Check in constantly with your teams, and talk to the teams and find out where the pain points are, and measure it. Find out if that's still a problem, after 2 or 3 sprints or after 2 or 3 months, and measure it, engage, and review and pivot. So make sure you have this flexibility early in your DevOps rollout. And if you constantly have that in your DevOps rollout, it will make it a whole lot easier to continually pivot all the time. Otherwise, when you start to say and enforce a culture change or enforce, no, this is what we decided, this is what we need to do, that never works. We're in an era where technology and organizations change constantly. You can't just stick to the same direction all the time. So the team should be able to pivot, change direction, or do whatever adjustments are necessary for a successful outcome. So again, review what the customer's needs are, talk to product, talk to marketing, and bring those those data points that you collect about those customers, bring it back into your teams. If fast releases is the most important part, then that's what needs to be focused on. If there's problems with your customers' feedback saying that something's broken or wrong, and you're constantly having bugs, then testing becomes an important piece. But you need to pivot and be flexible at all times. One of the last topics or burdens I want to highlight is security. And often this is in all development, it's not just, I wouldn't just say DevOps, but as DevOps is being introduced and the workflow has been introduced, or the changes have been introduced, something often needs to give. Please, 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 do not let security become secondary. In a frenzy of adopting DevOps, never, ever, 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 ever overlook security. Failing to keep security in the forefront can have huge detrimental issues, and it can lead to many secondary problems. I've seen security can ruin a whole product and sometimes a whole business. Keep your security tight. Don't compromise a few seconds or minutes. Usually that's what it is for our development teams. And keep your systems protected at all times. So if you're building pipelines, you're building workflows, again, make sure you keep security on the forefront of everything that you do, and don't create a problematic system where someone could hack in or compromise or take advantage of data that your systems might be leaking. So what you need to ensure is that you create a security first culture. And with your DevOps rollout, but don't expect everyone to be security experts. Sometimes training will be required. Sometimes you need to engage some teams together. If you've got security experts within your organization, make sure you are having constant conversations between the developers and operations. If you don't have security experts in your organization, the non-enterprise companies, research. Someone should take a lead on security within your organization, and research. Bring security to the forefront of regular conversations, perform workshops, provide training from the organization, and educate. If one person learns something cool about security, or even learns a story that's happened within security space, share it, embrace it, talk about it, and find out how that was compromised. Now, security issues can occur at all organizations. Even Google's vulnerabilities are happening all the time. It's something that's essential. And as I mentioned, it has killed products. It has killed full companies, including those that are earning millions and millions of dollars, when their data was breached and so forth. So please do not let security become a second consideration for your development teams. Please ensure that you still have a security first culture. If there isn't a security first culture in the first place, build one. Make sure you share the knowledge and details that you all learn and embrace it. And if you're not paying for education with your teams, so if you're in management and essentially the teams are not educated about the constant security changes, consider that as one of the pros and benefits of your organization, is to teach your teams. If you are a developer, there's so many resources out there available, from Pluralsight, if you want to pay for learning about security, to YouTube, and so many other free resources available online. So there is a vast amount out there, and there's so many even free tools, cool tools to use. With security, the one thing I want to point out, security, we generally in the past used to always put up walls. We used to always essentially say to our users with prompts, do you really want to do this? Do you want to do this? And do you want to do this? And that was what we considered security, was to prompt the user and tell them, essentially, do you want to do this? Are you happy to accept this, and so forth? But security no one cares about security often. It's often a secondary consideration. And the best quote I've generally ever found to talk about how much important security is this one. When given a choice between dancing pigs and security, the user will pick dancing pigs every time. So that's more focused on the end users that are essentially using our sites, our customers and end users. If you gave them the option to say, hey, here's some dancing pigs or here's security, which one will they pick? They will pick dancing pigs every time. The same thing can happen with our development teams. So even though this is more about the customers, the same thing can happen within our internal teams, that security becomes a secondary consideration, or security becomes even worse. You are compromised, and then finally security is considered after you've been compromised, which is the worst position to be in because the damage has been done. So please, security first culture. And as I mentioned, remember to build rivers, not walls. So guide every user through this journey. This is not about building more and more complex walls to, for you. And when I say users, I'm not just talking about customers at the end. I'm also talking about your developers, your operations team, head of the product or head of marketing. Guide them through an easy to understand system. This is where user experience and security join together and essentially improve this whole process. So if I haven't beaten the drum enough, please do not put security to the side. It's really, really, really important. Now, to wrap up a lot of this, and if you are down to, if you are starting DevOps, I have included a quick slide of how to get started. And the best way to essentially look at how to get DevOps started in your organization is to look at the CALMS framework. It assesses your company's ability to adopt DevOps processes. This includes culture, automation, lean, measurement, and sharing. So the big one there that I definitely want to point out is sharing. Sharing. Share the details and learnings that you all have. The long friction that usually occurs between development operations team is largely due to lack of common ground. So share. This is about getting those two teams to gel together, work together, and share that responsibility. And you'll find that success will go a very long way once you start to have that culture of sharing. And the first point, one of the things I do like about the CALMS framework is that the first point is culture. And as I started at this, as I mentioned at the start of this presentation, culture is the first consideration you need to make. Don't think about any tools yet. Don't suggest any tools yet. Talk to the teams about how we can roll out DevOps, how we can get people to adopt it, what processes are required, and start that discussion point first. Then you'll find, going through the different other methods, automation, lean, and measurement will just naturally come once you've solved culture. And you will essentially roll out very, very easily once you've nailed culture. But having said that, culture isn't the easiest thing to roll out either, a big culture change. So please be patient, listen, pivot, and learn. You will learn, even as management, get involved with the teams. You'll probably surprise yourself at how much you'll learn from your teams about what is necessary and what is not. Essentially pivot based on what you learn. And I hope you all enjoyed this presentation. It was very non-technical, and there's a reason for that, because I am trying to push that DevOps is about it's about the culture and not the technical changes. If you at BrisJS, I've done a few other talks, also at DD Brisbane. So the one I've done earlier is about automated visual and accessibility regression testing. Customer experience is another talk that I've done with various organizations. Have not yet done that at BrisJS. But if you are interested about customer experience, about understanding customer experience from a developer's perspective, I've done a great presentation about that. And then last of all, of course, is DevOps, which is, this is the first time I've done this presentation, so I hope you did enjoy it. And I will love to hear feedback about this presentation. So before I jump into the next speaking role that I have about DevOps, I'll definitely learn from you guys and adapt and pivot and change this presentation based on your feedback. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I'll mention the careers that are available at Tiny. This year we've been growing, and we aren't stopping any time soon. In fact, 26% of our team has joined us since the start of the year. Our growth has been quite staggering. And as of this month, just the start of this month, we're now located in 12 different locations, including Australia, Sweden, England, Poland, Ukraine, United States, and everywhere in between. So we are embracing remote work with all the changes that have occurred. And so thus, that gives us the opportunity to provide careers at Tiny that could be located anywhere. So I have put in the technical careers that we do have available at Tiny. And so we are looking for a JavaScript software engineer here in Australia, as well as another one in Europe. So if you are based in Europe, or you know someone in Europe, or even if you're thinking of moving to Europe, we can essentially, you could be part of the team and join us on the impact that we have on the internet. As I mentioned, over 30% of the websites use our product. That's more than 500 million websites, right, that are hosted throughout the world. And as you can see, used by IBM, Facebook, Oracle, and so many other companies out there. And also we're looking for a QA intern based here in Australia as well. Q&A time.
Thanks so much, Dallas. Yay!
Thank you.
All righty. I will just ask you to stop screen share, and we will go into our little Q&A session. There we go. There's you and there's me. Cool. So we've got a bunch of little questions and talking points that have come through our Slido. So thank you very much, everyone, for jumping in there. Let's go in no particular order, except from the top to the bottom. So we'll go as a development team. How do we go about learning most effectively to be productive in contributing to build up DevOps?
Start small. Honestly, that's the if you haven't got anything automated, you know, pop in something you know, that can easily do a quick build. But start with the small stepping stones. As I said, mention throughout the presentation, culture. Start the talk. You know, the water cooler talk is probably the most effective, you know, depending on your reach of engagement. So if you can talk with your management and you have that reach and you can express that, you know, start the water cooler talk. If you both get in a coffee at the same time, start, you know, introduce that topic at that point in time. And then the other side of it, as developers, if you have already got access to tools to do some of the automation, there's no harm in adding a build to that, and essentially, you know, saying to your team, hey, we're doing a build, and start that stepping stone there as well. But yeah, start off small. In many ways, you do need to market it internally within your organization, and don't give up. Have patience. Even if you get everyone engaged, the rollout is going to be even, you know, further work.
Cool, great. The next one is, what sort of things can you do to get teams ready for large scale culture changes? I think that came in before your slide on that topic, but I don't know if you want to add anything particular. Getting teams ready.
Getting teams ready.
Culture.
Okay. Again, depends. So I've been in organizations where the operations and development teams have been on the same floor. So that's, you know, getting them to gel is not so difficult because they generally know each other. Then I've worked with you know, large scale organizations where development team is located, you know, in Brisbane and the operations team is located in Canberra. And so getting them to gel is a different scenario. If you've got the money, which this organization did, fly them to one single location and have the gel, you know, get them face to face. And these days with you know, social distancing, obviously get everyone together in a Zoom call, make it a casual catch up to begin with, get that gel going, and then start to talk about the movement. And again, start small. Sometimes you need to just do it with one team. So if you've got one product looked after by one team, start with just a single team. Pick a team that you know will adopt easily. You know, generally you will have the people, if they come screaming to you saying, Angular just released a new version last night, we need to upgrade. If they're those type of people, they're the ones that, you know, to pick that team as, you know, the ones that will adopt it the far easiest. But yeah, start small and research and pivot. And when you've nailed it with that team, then expand out. And again, expand out slowly. So again, it all comes down to your organization. I would like to be able to say there's one answer, but there's not. It's like agile rollout in many different ways. Agile even required agile coaches at many organizations to roll it out properly for, you know, 3 to 5 years. So yeah. You may need to consider, like, as I said, at Tiny, we do have someone dedicated, and it's not someone who is working on all the DevOps changes just himself. He essentially pulls in the teams responsible for every single change.
Yeah, that's great. Well, on that topic, there was one actually here around having an ops person specifically. Well, I guess this one qualifies. What's the difference between a web developer using DevOps skills and a DevOps engineer? Will a DevOps engineer be like a Scrum master making everyone get involved?
The way that DevOps engineer works at that organization can be completely different between organizations, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Generally, they look after the builds, they look after the continuous integration and development. If that DevOps engineer is essentially trying to improve the automation across the organization and pull in the teams, that's a good DevOps engineer. If that person has been essentially dedicated to look after the builds and it's just that person's responsibility, you're back at square one where you've got development teams on one side of the wall and operations on the other side of the wall. But instead of, now you've got like essentially development, a wall, DevOps engineer, a wall, and then operations. So if you're having someone dedicated to it and they're not trying to embrace it throughout the teams, and that it's just their responsibility, you've created an additional wall. You need to break down all those walls, bring the teams together. It's when the moment you have success is when development see things happening in operations and then understand their impact in production. And that's when you start to see the success. So operations will say, we've had an increase of 5% of memory. And development, if you can make that feedback loop really quick and easy, development teams will embrace that and go, oh, that's because we did that new library. Oh, we did not really, you know, you would have those feedback loops really, really quickly. And then vice versa. The operations teams will learn about, you know, the development needs, and you know, the development teams can essentially say, look, if we use Node version 14, we can solve all these memory issues, or we can, you know, embrace all these new features and functions and so forth, and our applications would run 15 times, you know, 15% faster. It goes both ways. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Cool. What's the next best one here? Well, you mentioned Node a few times there, so I'm going to throw in this question. With a JS strong team, are there some DevOps tools that can feel more natural to adopt because you can just write JS? Might be a tooling specific question there.
Look, generally most tools are agnostic to what technology you're using. If you're like enterprise, I would never lock in a team to a technology. We often have discussions about ensuring, you know, if we had to change technology, or even if we had to change platform. So if we use a hybrid of platforms from AWS to Azure and Google Cloud, and many more. But you know, if we had to move one product to another platform, you know, we regularly assess that. So first of all, I'll never lock into a technology. But there is things like, for JavaScript in particular, one tool that can work really well and resolve all your pull request problems is using Prettier. You know, bring Prettier into your build pipeline, use it, you know, within your Git automation, and remove all those arguments and conversations you have over a number of spaces, and, you know, whether this should be capital or there should be a colon here, or, you know, double quotes or single quotes. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Yeah, if there's bureaucracy at any point of time in your build pipeline, look at a way to automate that and make it a computer's problem, not, you know, a human problem. And you'll move the impact. You know, as I said, Prettier was at the top of the list of thoughts when I was thinking, because the number of conversations I've had about 4 spaces, 2 spaces, or tabs is just, mind-boggling to the point where I'd like, here's someone talk about it, I walk away. Yeah,
that sounds great.
Yeah.
I've got another one here. Do ops products, so products with quotes, that handle your CI/CD and do built-in cloud, I guess, deployment support. Do they offer a good way to get running in a well-automated fashion until you can do more yourself?
Oh, yes.
So can they be a stepping stone?
Yeah, if you're not familiar with some of the tools, then some good tools to start off with to begin with. GitHub Actions is really good these days, works really well. So if your repository is already with GitHub, look at GitHub Actions for doing your deployments. It is still, they're still working on improving this product. So it's not mature like a lot of other products, but if that's your introduction, then GitHub Actions is great. In fact, we used at Tiny, we used GitHub Actions. So we use it quite extensively with some of our teams. Circle CI is another company that comes to mind. Azure, they call it Azure DevOps, which is a bit of a, you could argue against the name of it, but Azure DevOps it's actually quite a mature tool to use, but the user interface is one of the easiest and simplest I've ever used. And you can definitely get down to some advanced rules and workflows with Azure DevOps. So it is a good one to start with, and it's also a great one to remain with whilst you're going through the learning curve of using the tools. And then if Azure DevOps, you can start off on a free tier. I think once you add in more people or you add in more projects, that's when the costs start to incur. If you want to migrate from this simplest tools and you want to start hosting it yourself, Jenkins is another great tool. Just be aware that Jenkins will have a steep learning curve. And I've generally found when Jenkins breaks, it's painful. It's never easy. So take that bit of software with but at the same time, when you get it to work, oh my God, it's essentially, it's really powerful once you get it up and running and you're working quite well. So if a lot of operations and those that have been working with DevOps culture for quite some time will say, as they've advanced further, they'll say Jenkins is definitely a pro tool to use, and it's free. You can host it in the cloud, or you can host it on-prem or on your machine if you really can.
That would then, I guess, also, there's the other side of the coin. This question is, how do you feel about platform as a service like Heroku, Now SH, Netlify, and where do they sit in the DevOps radar?
In terms, I'd assume this person's referring to just essentially as a platform to host. The way that they provide their services are all quite unique and different. Heroku is really good at essentially, if you're wanting to use all our products and services really easily, and you want to get up and running with our products and services, they support you all the way. But I wouldn't say Heroku, just running on Heroku is the answer. Like DevOps, they build the application and they'll deploy it on your infrastructure, but you still need, there's so much more there to be done, from testing your code to end-to-end testing to the other things I mentioned earlier was like accessibility testing and visual regression testing and so much more. You're not going to get them out of the box with those platforms. they are great for getting their technologies to work together, and shoehorning in other technologies from other platforms. But yeah, to be honest, it's not really one I can answer directly without more context.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's totally natural with this kind of Q&A. That's no worries at all.
Yeah, I'm used to having 100 people standing and sitting in front of me. Yeah, completely different doing it virtual. I only get to talk to you.
I mean,
that's
sorry,
great.
I'll pretend to be more people. We got one from Louisa here, so you can say hi, Louisa. There's how do you get business to engage in DevOps and move away from comfort zone manual processes?
Oh, influence. Honestly, it is influence, marketing and influence. But look, I'm not going to say that it will reduce development time. I'm not going to say it's it's going to save money, because it won't. And it's as like Agile was rolled out with across the world. Agile's been around for decades. So for those who don't know, Agile's been around from even the 80s. There was a form of Agile. And if you look at the movement, it's only taken in the past 10 years, really, Agile's taken off. And so you can see how long it can take for culture movement to change across a whole community or across the whole ecosystem. But these days, things will move a lot faster. What has taken 30, 40 years in the past will be adopted much faster today, because just the way we communicate these days is much faster. Back then it was radio and television and textbooks. So back to the question. It will highlight, now if you bring it back down to the customer experience. So if you're in an enterprise company, this is actually easier to roll out than it is for a small business. That could be argued as well. But if you can say, look, we can start to measure, customer experience, and we can make a 1 point increase on the customer experience because we release faster, we respond faster, we understand what's happening in production a lot clearer. It's a lot more transparent. We have an operations team talking with developers and vice versa. And in the end, it's the customers that win. Any enterprise organization will essentially just love to hear, oh, you're going to increase the customer experience. That could, in some industries like car industry can increase, if you make 1 point out of a scale of 0 to 100, make 1 point increase in that scale, that could be like $500 million. So working in financial institutions in the past, it was essential. We were making increments of like 0.1%, but that per day was, making $500,000 difference per day, just that small incremental change. So you will, depending on the level of influence you have. So for me, I'm in a position where I do have influence over what my teams do and what the organization does, but it doesn't mean I just go off firing either. Like, even within my organization, I still have these conversations with my team and ensure and get essentially like a sign off. It may be verbal, it may be email, but essentially a sign off before we make big changes. But if you're a developer and you wanting to push for a DevOps movement, find someone within leadership or find someone you can leverage to essentially build this movement internally. You build from the ground up, bring it up, and those who are, as I mentioned earlier, those who are early adopters of change will become your superheroes of the movement. And yeah, influence is that it's not great that you have to market these these improvements, but you do actually, at the end of the day, it's all about influence and your internal marketing of yourselves and the team.
Yeah, it's all about working in a company, right? Like you need to be able to communicate an idea and get people to believe in that idea to really see a lot of different success in your professional career. So that's
definitely
kind of agnostic to development and non-development. You know, like that's just the thing.
I often like I blurt things out at company meetings all the time, and one of the things, like if there's a problem, I'll say, it's like every project is 90% human problems and 10% technical. It's a thing of every single company. It's at the end of the day, it comes down to change management. If you speak about
if you can advertise, you can react quickly. You know, you can get something in production safely, quickly, through automated DevOps practices, then that's the way to go about it, rather than trying to convince that already stressed out person that you need to do a deploy that day. That's moving away from manual processes to automated processes. So I think that those kind of ways can be sold.
And look, as I mentioned, we've got 2 years worth of changes that we want to adopt at Tiny. And we've just had to prioritize it and say what's priority 10 being the highest and what's priority 1. Now, I can tell you right now, priority 1's probably never going to get touched. It's because you're continuously pivoting, you're continuously changing. And I can honestly, in 2 years' time, we're not going to be like, oh yeah, we can finally get to that priority 1 issue, because by the time we get there, there's going to be another priority 10, another priority 8, another priority 6. You got to pivot. You got to change even as you roll it out. So it's the nature of the game.
Cool. Last 2 questions. The system space, especially with cloud, which cloud it says, is so varied. How can you know as a dev what to invest in? I think this is in education and trying to work out how you can roll out things to cloud yourself.
The simple answer to this is talk to your teams and learn what they are familiar with first before looking at which platform to go with. It does cost a lot of money for the organization to go through education and learn in the role. So don't force a platform if the team doesn't know it. You can do a matrix and work out what's all the pros and cons of every single, what features you need, and then go across all the different platforms and work out which ones tick which and which ones do it really well, which ones do it really bad. You can do that matrix. That will give you one answer. The other side of it that you need to really ask yourself is my team familiar with that piece of technology? And if they're not, that's going to cost you a whole lot more compared to a feature that one of those platforms or technologies doesn't have. Human cost is probably going to be the largest cost you'll have as an organization. It's, in many organizations, when I look at the human resource costs, it's usually 60% of the revenue, minimum 60% of the revenue goes towards humans, resources. So having them learn a platform or technology they're not familiar with will change that answer pretty quickly. I think
you could also look at this question from a bit of an individual view as well, because it says basically there's a lot of stuff out there. I'm a dev. I want to learn some things about getting deployments happening, right? As an individual, I may not even be employed in a team. How can I best back a winner to start making the best approach of my time as a self-education kind of approach?
Okay. The answer to that, so if you're very early, like whichever tool, okay, so if you're looking at a tools perspective and if you're not looking at culture changes and so forth, that's a different thing. But if you're just looking at tools, the one you adopt the easiest, I guess, is the answer to this. Because again, with DevOps, you know, choosing a tools to use to automate your processes and deployments and releases and feedback loops, you need to be flexible with those tools as well. Don't try not to force yourself into one tool.
Yeah. It's very situational.
Yeah, so so for once you get advanced, maybe when you're starting off, just you know, if cache is a problem, then that's going to limit you to free tools or you know ones that offer a free tier like Azure DevOps and GitHub Actions. But if money's not a problem and essentially you want to get into much more advanced, you start to look at tools like Ansible and Terraform to build your infrastructure as code. So I'm taking a huge leap here. If you don't understand DevOps to begin with, you learn this later. Don't jump to this, please. But if you're a person who loves to just jump in deep, sure, take this piece of advice. But look at infrastructure as code. There is tools available for this as well. The really cool thing that Ansible and Terraform and other tools like this can provide is you write your infrastructure as code. So you say, you know, what databases you need, you say what servers you need, how they're deployed, how they're connected, what security policies are, and everything like that. And then you can say, now roll it out to AWS, or you can say roll this out to Azure, and it can do both. Some of the things in there may be AWS specific, like DynamoDB. That's a little bit of a trade-off, but it won't be hard to rewrite your infrastructure as code to pivot to another platform when needed. So yeah, that's making a huge leap and bound to not lock yourself into a technology. But to begin with, honestly, just jump in, play with the tools. And yeah, as I said, GitHub Actions is relatively simple. Azure DevOps is relatively simple. They're both free. Bitbucket, I think, has some pipelines now available for free. Yes, they always have, actually, come to think of it. They were out before GitHub Actions. Yeah, so if you're using GitHub already, look at GitHub Actions. If you're using Bitbucket, look at pipelines. And
same with GitLab.
Yeah, GitLab. Yeah, obviously another contender to highlight, which everyone is migrating to very quickly. Yep.
Cool. All right, so last question. If you are starting up and the systems team can give you nothing but a new cloud account to build in, how can you accelerate that effort?
If you're just starting out and the cloud team is giving you nothing but a login.
Systems team is giving you nothing but a new cloud account. So they're like, we're too busy, here's your cloud account. That's how I read that.
Oh, yeah, okay. You're back at, you're at ground zero. You don't want to be working in isolation against the operations team. That's a much higher level problem. If the operations team is refusing to work with the development team, yeah, that's a higher up problem. If you still have that problem and friction and you want to move fast, I'll honestly say I have been somewhat part of this movement against other teams that are not so, I guess, easy to gel with. But yeah, and look, lead the way, but don't disengage them completely. Would be my advice.
Yeah.
Take them.
Let's be kind and say that you know they're just really busy at the moment and they want to help you. but they can't. And they're like, but we can give you an environment and you can see how far you get, and then maybe we'll work on it together later.
Yeah. As mentioned in the CALMS framework, you will have people that will adopt it faster than others. Let them be the superheroes in your team and organization, and share that knowledge. If you're not doing product showcases in your company, A, start doing product showcases, and B, involve DevOps as part of that product showcase as well, and show what we've been able to do. A, we don't need to involve a human in this step anymore. We've completely automated it. You'll be amazed of how much time your computers and servers will sit there doing nothing, particularly overnight. And that's like so many. You pretty much got 16 hours in your day that you can leverage your own computer, let alone servers that you have access to just do all sorts of things. So from end-to-end testing at 2 o'clock in the morning, hey, no one's using your staging server. You've got all this time and that you could be leveraging to run all sorts of things, and show those incremental improvements that you're making amongst your company. Involve non-technical as well, and explain, share and explain. Eventually, the operations team will eventually adopt it as well. But one of the points I made earlier on is don't expect everyone to know everything about it to begin with. You need to educate, and also don't expect the same involvement from everyone to begin with. It is a culture change. It can take time. It can take 3 to 5 years even, depending on the size of your organization.
Absolutely. All right, that's it. You got through the question list. Let me double. Yep, there's no more. I was going to say somebody could have snuck in just then.
It's good. The Q&A is often longer than the presentation, but it's where people get the most rich details and answers, I guess.
That's it. That's the way it goes.
But now that I can see you again, Kevin, on behalf of Brisbane community, mate, thank you for running this for another successful year. You've done very well, and I'm sure everyone behind YouTube are clapping for you, and I'm sure others who will watch this later, someone who watches at 2 o'clock in the morning. Thank you for all the time and effort you put into this. You've done wonders in the Brisbane community, and we've commented amongst the community to say that you are running one of Australia's, if not Australia's, biggest developer community. So well done, and thank you for another successful year.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure and an honor to try and help everyone and just bring everyone together. And the whole idea is to give everyone a voice. So we all need that opportunity, so that if you want to elevate yourself, you can. You've got the platform right here, and I'm more than happy to help you achieve it. So thank you very much, everyone. And that's great. And thank you very much to Dallas for enlightening us and answering Q&A and taking us through the world of DevOps. And then we can get our JavaScript onto a server and into somebody's eyeballs. That's kind of how we want to do things, right?
Yes. Yep. Deploy and automate it.
That's the way it is.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah. Reach out to me. I've seen a few LinkedIn requests pop up. Reach out to me if you want to know more or connect. And yeah, thank you guys, and have a safe and happy holiday.
Absolutely. Enjoy your break. And like I mentioned, we always skip January because attendance was low and everyone's on holidays and they're all away, and usually it falls in a very early time after New Year's and something like that. So tradition dictates that we come back in February. And we'll hopefully be back at a venue, and I'll be able to announce details for all of that stuff as well. So it's plenty to be kept up to date with. And he's crossing his fingers. That's excellent.
Well, yeah, I don't want to jinx it again. I was the last, in March, in the last, physical presentation. So hopefully, it gets
all good. No problem. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, you will see us in the new year. And do reach out. Do submit those talks, folks. Please, 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 please submit talks. You keep this thing alive. So yeah, absolutely. That's one of my hardest things, just trying to get everyone together. But you know, it's so valuable. And what you have to say, no matter if you say, well, I don't know, I'm not the most knowledgeable person about this, or whatever your excuse, it doesn't matter. You have a unique perspective and people want to hear it. So do put it up there, and we can help in any way we can. Like we'll definitely be out there to try and help you. I'm going to throw out my final slide with some extra links to BrisJS. It's got Twitter on there. It's got my email address if you want to get in touch with me directly. Yeah, we'll see you next month. Thank you, everyone. Bye.